And welcome. This is Tampa Home Talk, and I'm your host, Katrina Madewell, joined by my sidekicks today, both of you, Mr. Leo Kane.
Leo Kane with Beryl Engineering and Inspection. That storm we were talking about last Friday, wow.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that today and more. And of course, Mr. Adam Talley can tell you a thing or two about insurance.
Hey, good morning. It's good to be back. It's been like 3 weeks.
I
you know.
So today's topic is going to be, what should I do if my house floods? Right, from a hurricane, from a storm. Little did we know last week, Leo, when we were talking about this, it was going to be like an impact here. But a lot of our listeners over in like the Weeki Wachee, Hudson area have gotten flooded. So some personal clients and friends of mine have also been flooded. And so today's show is all about the logistics for them. So I want to do a good job outlining this so that if you're listening and you know someone else that it's been flooded, you can share this show with them. It does get posted to YouTube. It goes on any podcast player. And we stream live on Facebook. So we'll jump into the numbers. We won't waste any time.
And terrestrial radio.
Yes, terrestrial radio on AM, FM, XD,
I think you nailed it. I think you got it. There it is.
HD,
there it is.
HD.
Nothing gets by you.
Are you trying to say HG?
I don't know. HETV?
He's on that too, actually.
Yes,
so you know
yes.
he's still covered.
All right. So the number of new listings coming in this week at 612.
Is that the lowest of the year?
Seems very.
That seems
low.
lowest. That seems like it might be the lowest of the year.
Do you think that could be storm related? Like people
yeah,
like kind of
definitely.
looking and saying like, hey, let's not even list it because nobody's coming next week.
Well,
like,
you
let's
have to
see.
think everything pauses for at least 2 days when all this
Right.
happened, right?
Well, and if you're in the insurance industry, it pauses for a week.
A lot longer.
Yeah, no,
like,
I don't think it's storm related because you have to think that these are last week's numbers, right? Or these this
No,
week's?
this is a rolling 7 days.
Oh, okay,
Today's
yeah.
7
This
days.
is the storm.
Definitely,
Yeah. Nothing happened Tuesday and Wednesday this week.
Yeah, so we're down from 755 last week, which makes sense, right? When we had at least 2 days, maybe more, of nothing happening.
So for that logic to prove true, next week we should be in the high 8s, low 9s.
Because today would be the day that things that didn't get listed last week would probably go live now that we're past the storm.
So for us to believe that this is storm related, then next week we should be in the high 8s.
You'll have an influx of people, too, that will list shortly after.
Sounds like a science project.
Yeah,
I'm excited.
Sounds like a test. Yes,
You'll get a few that are like, yeah, I'm not staying here for a storm. You get some that move like out of state or different areas or not on the water.
Do we still have people that can't get back to their areas? I know let's say in the greater Tampa Bay area. Do we still have people that can't get back? Because I thought everything was lifted on an A.
I mean, the ones that I know, I saw the Facebook post, they're returning home to start cleaning up. So
Northern Pasco and anything above that probably still maybe subsided by now, but yeah.
Sold is pretty consistent. Just to wrap this up, coming in at 750 last week, we're at 744. Pending coming in at 665. That's down a little from 758 last week.
These look like our lowest numbers of the year. I mean, we're substantially down from last week.
Well, it's the end of summer too, right?
Well, I think the bigger issue is we took 2 or 3 days out of our week.
Yeah, I mean, we lost 20%. So, I mean, like if you think 20% is going to be 2 days out of 7. So, yeah.
All right, so we've got some tips for you. What should you do if your home floods? So the first tip on here is stay calm, right? Just stay calm. You're not going to be able to change the outcome of this. You just have to deal with it. So it's very upsetting. It's devastating. You can see a lot of stuff being just ruined, but it's important to remain calm, right? Keep your composure.
Yes.
Because it's going to be a process. This is going to be a long haul. It's going to take some time. Like everything from the clean out to the restore to the insurance and more. It's going to take some time.
Yeah, it's a very long process, and especially now we'll have to talk about the 2 different types of insurance. That's why Adam's going to
definitely
basically take over with the 2 different types of insurance and what you can do and what you can't.
Well, the second thing, and I know we're airing this a little bit after the storm hit, but wait till it's safe to go home. So make sure you're cleared by the local authorities before you try to go home and assess what's there and figure it out. We see too many people try and go back, and like the storm is still swirling outside. And
storms. The good thing about this storm was it was a very fast-moving storm for what it was. It's amazing because when you're on the highway driving from, let's say, Bradenton to Tampa, it takes an hour. But if you're a hurricane over the middle of the water, putzing along at like 10 to 12 miles per hour, you're covering that distance in like super fast. It's amazing, these storms, the geography they can move versus what you're driving on the road at 60 miles per hour is just about the same.
Right.
It's in there driving like as the bird flies, so to speak, or as the crow flies.
As the hurricane flees?
Moves, something like that.
Flees, I like that.
So the first thing you do once it's safe to go back is you're going to survey all the damage. Take lots of pictures, lots of videos.
Yes.
Hopefully you heard some of our other shows where you want to do all of that before you actually evacuate your home or before there's a storm. So when you come back, you need to do the same thing.
Before and after, put it in the cloud. It's time stamped that way.
I recommend YouTube. Upload it to YouTube if you can. Everything's time and date stamped there.
I recommend getting a yardstick, measuring tape. If you have measuring tape, that's good too, or yardstick, because one of the things you're going to want to do for flood is measure the height of the water. As it starts to recede, you'll be left with soot or something at the side of your house, dirt. You want to capture how high that water was, and the best way to do it is going to be a yardstick or measuring tape, where you can have that in some of the photos. In that way, there's no disputing how high that water was when it got to your house.
Got it. That makes sense, because you can't
That's a good
obviously
tip.
manipulate that. That's a very good one. So the next thing I want to talk about is before you call your insurance company to make a claim, call your agent. Ask questions, and the reason why I'm saying this tip before we go into just straight away call the insurance company, you don't want to be left with a $0 claim. And that's probably a good time to ping it over to you, Adam, to pick that up. But I say call, and you're probably not going to love this, right? Because you're going to get flooded with calls. But I say call your agent first.
So I would say, and if we want to talk about, I know this is flood specific, but if we want to talk about the storm, homeowners and flood in general, I would say it should be specific to the situation, right? Like if you have an entire tree that is through your roof, like we know you're past your deductible, right? Like there's not really a question there. You're just, the only thing you're doing is now you're further back in line with what's likely citizens at this point.
Well, remember, homeowners insurance and flood are different.
Correct.
So it's really important to make a distinction there. It does not cover rising water.
Correct. And hopefully, most of the people that flooded, I believe, were actually in flood zones. Everybody's in a flood zone technically, but I believe a lot of the people that did get flooded were in those high-risk zones, the Anclote River, stuff like that. So they hopefully were covered properly now. The thing with flood that a lot of people need to consider as well is your deductible, which I think is what you were maybe alluding to is, if it's minor, you might be able to avoid
Well, that's why I was saying ask questions before you just make a claim.
Correct.
Yes, you want to get in line as quickly as possible. But, for example, most people have no idea what their dwelling limits are, how much they have, what the mechanics of a flood insurance policy are.
I think we skipped this step, though. I mean, before you even call anyone, you should get home. You should
assess the damage.
Assess your own damage. See if you have power. See if you have water. Even bigger safety tips, if there are puddles and there is standing water, like in your driveway or stuff, don't even get into your house. You have to make sure that there's no electricity in that water, and you'll kill yourself. So,
correct.
Before we start thinking about insurance claims from a safety standpoint, you really have to make sure that the water is receded enough where you can actually see if your house has power. That is the very first thing you need to check, because you don't want to walk into an electrocuting box.
That's a huge one, but I'll tell you also, looking at one of the person that I know that got flooded, Leo, they said the power companies are not even turning on their electricity until they get cleared by an electrician.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they did that after a lot of the storms. Engineer can clear it, an electrician can clear it. Needs to be cleared, but I'm talking about they can be flipping. When a storm happens, the electric company first goes through and they try and refuse as many feeder lines as possible. At that point in time, unless your transformer fuse blows, your line is live. So, yeah, it's great. They want to, before your individual home can be powered back on, that's different than your individual home has power going to it. And that's where you can electrocute yourself.
Light your house on fire, a number of things.
Yeah, I mean, if you have solar and you're backfeeding, you can have your solar could be generating power. I mean, this is a lot. You're resting on tripped breakers. The biggest safety tip is if there's standing water, you don't go into your house until that's receded and you can verify there's no electricity.
Definitely. It's a huge thing. I mean, even the first responders don't go out until the roads have been cleared by police and fire for that reason.
The first responders go out before the first responders?
Yeah, they can't go out to clear anything until it's been cleared. Because, like you said, the water, electricity, not a good combination. So.
813-377-2775. That's 813-377-2775. Text the word
Just flood if you want some
Flood.
help.
Yeah.
flood.
Information.
Just flood. We'll hook you up with Adam. Adam can flood your inbox with emails.
Yeah. We'll talk about what to do next when we continue. Stick around.
This is Leo Kane, Beryl Engineering and Inspection, bringing you
And inspection. I love it.
bringing you tips of the week. This whole episode is tips of the week.
Yes.
Speaking of which, I have a friend. He's a gym rat. He went on a first date the other day.
Okay.
He decided to do it at the gym, which he never showed up.
Oh.
Unbelievable.
I just don't see it working out.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Yeah, today's
You had 2 whole minutes to promote your
That's the-
business, and you did a dad joke.
that's the bad joke.
Well, I mean, you have to think. This whole show is the tip
No,
of the week,
it
so
is,
I
it
needed to
is,
just bring
it
some
is.
levity to the
I
table.
appreciate it.
Yes.
I appreciate it.
So what to do if your house floods with a hurricane or a storm? To run through it real quick. Stay calm. Don't return home until you're clear by local authorities or a professional, so you don't get electrocuted.
That's the biggest thing is don't get electrocuted. Can't stress that enough. Standing water, you do not want to drive into it because you can't tell how deep it is. For all you know, that piece of the pavement could have fallen into the ground. A sinkhole could have opened up because of all the water. So you don't want to drive into it. If there's standing water in your house, in your driveway, you don't want to walk into it because you don't know what the electrical is like. After that water is receded, it will recede from the outside of your home. You might want to just open a door, open your front and back door, and then step back and take a survey of is there actual still standing water in your home, or has that actually receded or seeped down into the ground?
So survey the damage, lots of pictures. Don't
Lots of
forget your
pictures.
yardstick before you do that so you can gauge how tall that truly was.
So if you have, let's say you were really vigilant, Leo, and you sandbagged everything. So maybe not too much, maybe no inside damage.
That'd be awesome. Sandbagged your doors. Sandbagged your front and back door. See, a lot of people forget to sandbag the back door.
So
I know that it's foolproof.
It's not foolproof.
How often do you think, in situations where, let's say, you're watertight for the most part? Because I think some of the flood that we had might have been inches, not feet, right?
Correct.
So let's say you were vigilant, you did that. If you have standing water on the outside of the house, what kind of risk does your house have as far as damage is concerned?
Well, you have to think. You've got a garage. You've got your rear doors that are sliders. You might have a pedestrian door on the right side of your house where the garage is, and then you've got your front door.
So the wood in the doors is what would be the biggest risk.
That's the risk there. But normally, like it's home inspection, low-hanging fruit. We inspect a house. We're going to open the garage pedestrian door, and we're going to see rot on the bottom of it. That's just pretty standard.
8 out of 10 times at least.
So if you've sandbagged and you've kept a lot of the water out, you should be good, because if you're sandbagging, you need more than a couple of inches to get past the sandbag. It's not foolproof, but you're stopping a large. Most of it. You're probably stopping your home from being
Especially
flooded.
if you're stucco to where you're not having if it's siding, there's definitely ways to get in on siding, right?
Yeah.
But stucco, you're pretty much solid. It's not, it's
this is where
waterproof.
This is where a block home is great. This is where if you do have a wood framed home that's built on a stem wall, where your lower 1 or 2 courses are block, you're still good there too.
Correct. Yeah.
So I think overall, if you did sandbag, you just got to wait for that water to recede. Move the sandbags again. Open your front door. Make sure there's no water coming out, and then you can start assessing the damages on the inside.
Yeah. I always tell people to save receipts as well. We were talking about photos and stuff. I always say save receipts. Any claim situation, whether it's even if it's a water leak in your house and you're like, I don't know if I'm going to make a claim. Well, take the photos, save the receipts, because without that, it's really hard to go back and claim something. So it just makes your life easier and makes the claims adjuster's life easier. If you're like, listen, these are all the things I've done. This is who I've hired. This is what we had to do to make this go. And
here's a question for you, Adam. Let's say the home floods and you have roof damage from wind.
Correct.
And you stay in
which
a
is
hotel. Who gets the bill?
So if you have wind damage and the wind damage is the reason why you could not live in the house.
But you evacuated because you evacuated because you were told to evacuate,
Right.
and you're in a hotel, and your house now has sustained both wind and flood damage.
So if it has wind and flood damage, okay, and if the wind damage, and the reason I'm being specific here is because flood doesn't most flood policies don't come with loss of use, which
Okay.
is what you're referring to.
Yeah.
So, but your homeowner's policy does, and it's usually it's either 10 or 20%. 10% is more common of your dwelling limit. So if your dwelling limit's $300,000, which is common, you got $30,000 for loss of use. So if, let's say, it was the wind that caused if you don't have a roof, you can't live in your house. Let's just call it what it is. It's
Yeah.
Florida, right? So they would pay for that hotel while your roof is getting repaired, while you can't live there. And, in severe instances, you're probably going to be in an apartment, right? Because it's just cheaper than having a hotel room. So that's what would happen there. Now, I do get this other question, and this would have been something for last week's show, but I was at a orientation all day. But loss of use doesn't cover just because you evacuated, okay? Because you don't have any damage to your house at that time, right? You're evacuating because you don't want to be there.
Oh, you're talking about.
But you don't have a
free.
choice. You're not evacuating because you don't want to be there. You actually do want to be there. They're not giving you a
but
choice.
you have a choice to be someplace that is free, which would be a local shelter. Right? So they're not going to pay for you to go stay in Orlando while your house is getting pummeled. Now, let's face it, you're really talking one day, because if you really do have damage after that, you either don't have damage, you're going home, or you have damage and then now day 2 or 3 or whatever. So maybe you're at most 2 days out of pocket. But
Okay, so we've basically covered, we show back up to the home, we start assessing, we start taking photographs, we then call the insurance agent before we file a claim. We've documented, we're saving receipts. So the next point after that would be under the advisement of the agent to file the claim. What if we can't reach the agent?
I would say, especially when it comes to flood, it's all run by FEMA, right? So like, if when in doubt, I would file the claim, right? I mean, in that sort of catastrophic situation, it's going to get up there price wise really, really quick.
Yeah.
So that's. I wouldn't really hesitate to file it. If it's so minor that you're really on the fence about it, then maybe start doing some of your own stuff first and see where your costs get. But that would be my only advice.
Well, with flood, what would be minor? I'm like, it just got in my garage.
I can't think of something that would be minor.
Yeah,
Garage, but even a
garage.
garage, like, let's face it, if you have 2 inches of standing water in your garage, that means you have 2+ inches of area that is going to get molded, rotted, everything else, because we live in Florida, and it's just not going to, you can't dry it appropriately if it's staying there that long.
Well, let's best case scenario, for your minor, I'm not going to file a claim. You had like 1 or 2 inches of water. It got in at the garage. It didn't get above the little step up into the house.
Fair enough, yeah.
You show up the next day, you open the garage, and you mop broom,
Brush
all
it
the water out.
Get some of those drying fans.
Would you need drying fans at that point? I mean, if you open the door for the garage and you've brushed it out.
I don't know. You're
I think that
the
would
scientist on that one.
I think it would dry out, don't you?
I'm just thinking
It might.
I would
It could.
say
But
that-
either way, but if you're on the fence, if that's the case,
Look at the wall.
do it, right?
Yeah.
Look at the wall. That would be your gauge, right? Look at the wall on the wall.
Yeah.
Well, and this storm's different, right? So, like, let's say you were in Newport Richey, right? So, which had some high levels, but not too bad, right? My in-laws' house was fine there on the water. Let's say you're in Newport Richey, and that was the case where it really was just like that. I probably don't have too much to worry about, I would think.
Yeah, because I mean, once the
Because
water
it moved quick, too. Like, you really only had 2 instances. You had when it was high, but it was low tide, which was actually the highest. And then you had the high tide that came at, I think it was 3 o'clock that
Depending
day.
on where you're at.
Right.
Some of those northern areas were as high as 5 p.m.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. But, in that instance where it was quick, the water got out quick was what I was saying. The people that were up north, that water didn't flush out as quickly. So, that... I would say, how long was the water waiting there, too?
True.
Right? If is it waiting there 2 or 3 days? That's a different story as opposed to, half a day.
So
which
now
some
we're
people
going to
were.
flip the scenario. If the water actually gets into your living space, all your flooring needs to come out.
Everything.
Usually they remove the lower 3 inches of drywall. Sometimes you're safe because you have 6-inch baseboard, but most people don't have 6-inch baseboard. So
let's talk about that for a minute, Leo, because yes, if you had, say, 3, 4, 5 inches or more
1 inch
in your home.
1 inch in your home.
1 inch without baseboards, you're saying.
You've got to start drying that out and cleaning out your home. So the first thing to do is get rid of all those damaged items, right? So any waterlogged furniture that's not salvageable, any of that stuff that you know is ruined, get it out of the house.
Well,
wet.
you know it's ruined, but what's the insurance company take on it? Do you have to keep it to let someone else look at it?
I would not leave that in your house.
So I would...
Again, you're taking pictures and videos when you're surveying the damage.
You are. But that's really specific, so I'd wait to throw something out, depending on what your claims adjuster tells you, because different carriers might have different... Like a Lloyd's flood policy might have a different rule than a
I would
FEMA
at
policy.
least get it out of my house.
I would move it into the garage.
Correct.
I'd probably bag it and move it into the garage, but I'm hesitant to say throw anything away until...
I would be hesitant as well, and I have something to say about contents when we come back as it relates to flood that might change your opinion on throwing things out.
Now, if you're not able to do that, there are some organizations that will help you. If you're elderly or just can't do it, they will help you clear out some of that stuff in your garage and cut that lower drywall.
813-377-2775. That's 813-377-2775. If you need help with insurance or you need an inspection of your flood-damaged home, 813-377-2775. We'll hook you up.
This is Tampa Home Talk. We'll be right back.
And welcome home. This is Tampa Home Talk. I'm Adam Talley with Talley Insurance. And before we dive back in, 813-377-2775. Just text flood if you have any specific questions. Happy to answer them. We can get your flood quote started now. As long as the storm is more than 30 days away, you'll be okay for the next one.
And happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday
Mr. Talley.
to my dad. Yes.
It's his dad. It's your dad's birthday today.
Yes, I'm sure he's not listening, but if he is, happy
tell him we
birthday.
wished him a happy
I
birthday.
will.
Does he get cake? Is there office cake today?
There probably will not be office cake. There might be an office lunch at some point.
There you go.
But, we'll
happy
see.
birthday. Does he go by Chuck or Charles?
He goes by Chuck.
That's
No
what I
cake?
thought.
Okay. That's how I know if somebody is calling, doesn't know who the heck they're
They ask
calling,
for
and they
Charles?
ask for Charles. I'm like, oh, okay, so you don't know who him. You're
Mr.
just trying to
Chuck
sell him
Talley,
something.
happy birthday.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, so before we left, we were talking about... well, I'm getting choked up about it. We were talking about contents and flood and what to do. And one of the reasons I would say is to maybe not throw something away, especially if it's questionable, right, is because flood insurance, especially in a storm like this where it is a water event, not a wind event, and there's really not a question about as to what caused it.
You would think.
You would think.
Leo with the
Big asterisks on that. I'll let our attorneys and engineers decide that one. But that being said, is contents on flood, and this is every NFIP policy. So maybe if you're one of the lucky ones that has a private market policy, it's different. But contents is actual cash value only on
which
flood.
is garage sale value.
Which is depreciated value.
So basically my $6,000 couch that's 5 years old is $200.
Maybe.
Correct.
You're lucky.
Correct.
You're lucky it's $200.
And you have a separate deductible for your building and for your contents with flood.
Oh, even better.
So if you're $5,000 and $5,000, well, you're easily going to go through $5,000 on the building, but that $5,000 on the contents
Is impossible.
at ACV, it pretty much you'd be looking at a total loss to start getting some of that.
I mean, to get a general idea of what your stuff is actually worth, go to a Salvation Army or a Goodwill and look at what they're selling stuff for.
Go to eBay.
Go to eBay.
eBay's a good
eBay price. eBay price versus brand new price. That's what you're dealing with.
I mean, it's crazy. Like, I know from normal events, like we're getting a new couch or we're getting a new ottoman and we try to get rid of our old one, we end up just
for free.
it.
If you can come get it.
If you can come get it. If you can come get it with your own truck and your own person to move it, you can have it for free. That's the going rate on used furniture.
Yeah, maybe if you're lucky, $200.
Yeah, that's...
If it's something functional like a washer and a dryer, $200.
Yeah, and even then it's a stretch because they want to come take a look at it. They want to spend time. No, I just want you in my house, grab it, and leave.
Yeah, that doesn't work.
Chatting on Facebook is already more contact than I want with these people. Just come get it.
So basically, if your actual cash value, like furniture's got like thousands of % markup, it depreciates much faster than anything else in the world.
So for me, that's not worth hanging on to. I'm just saying.
Well, it depends on what it is and how damaged is it, right? And can you live with it? That's what I would just say for because the common person isn't going to be able to just go and buy $10,000 worth of brand new furniture on a whim, right? They're not budgeted for that. That would put them, and it's just furniture to some people. It's not. We're not entertaining others. We just need to live, which is where, especially in the economy now, I mean, that's where some people are.
I mean, you got to think mattresses are going to function as sponges. Couches are going to function as sponges. You're not going to really be able to dry those out. You're going to think, I'm going to try and dry it out, and it's going to be damp for a little while.
It's not worth it. It's going to stink.
Well, it's going to get moldy.
It's going to get mold. 72 hours is all it takes for mold. 72 hours.
I would just assess that on your own, before, especially if you're going to throw something out. Because you don't know what is covered and how they want to look at it.
So I would say, and it's going to be hard to get people out, right, to help you start taking these things out.
Definitely.
So we're going to give you some tips. So you might want to consider purchasing some PPE equipment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
what is PPE?
Rubber boots, like personal protection equipment, rubber boots, gloves, masks, maybe even aerators. You have to think when these flood waters come in, there's a lot of hazardous stuff that comes with it, right? Sewage, chemicals. If your house has lead, that's another.
And that's why it goes back to, even with 1 inch of standing water, you're going to be way over your deductible, because the lower 3 feet of your drywall, baseboards, and all flooring needs to come out.
And that's the entire house.
That's the entire house. That needs to come out at a minimum. If you get above your cabinet line for the kitchen, your whole kitchen cabinet's got to come out. So it doesn't take much to catastrophically damage a house.
Well, and then
1 inch of water is all it takes.
FEMA 50 rule for some of these people too.
Yeah,
and that's going to be a big problem.
So
the FEMA 50 rule basically states that if the amount of repairs is going to be more than 50% of the cost of your house, as shown on your property appraiser, from just the building, not the building and the land. So you're more than 50% of the building value on the property appraiser website. You now need to bring the whole house up to flood code.
Yeah,
which could be several feet for some people that
could be lifting
where
a home
is built in the 70s.
Yeah, it could be lifting a home, could be moving all your outlets, could be raising AC equipment. It could be very quickly you go from. So how does law and ordinance work on a flood policy?
There isn't any law and ordinance on a flood policy.
So if you have to, let's say you have $30,000 worth of damage, and your house is $55,000 on the property appraiser site, and now you've got to do $100,000 worth of upgrades.
They go off the property appraiser site?
Yeah, property appraiser site. That's not covered?
I don't think so. So you could be in trouble.
All right. So let's talk about the next part, because Leo, this is a good question for you. When I added it to the outline, once you're assessing and you're taking out some of that stuff, which, by the way, if you're cutting drywall and you're cutting insulation that got wet behind, don't yank down, because now you leave a gap at the top where there's no insulation. So don't yank it. Cut it with a razor knife. Use gloves. Use all that stuff.
Better yet, have a professional.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to get some professionals.
That's true.
Yeah. So what you might want to do is cut some, because if your house gets flooded, the bottom 3 feet of your drywall is coming out.
Right.
So if you put some openings, like you cut some 12 by 12 openings, 12 inch by 12 inch openings in your drywall for aeration purposes to help air it out. Because
I would cut it out. I would just take a razor knife and start cutting 3 feet.
I'm going for I don't have the ability to do that type thing. Like, what's the bare minimum?
Everybody can cut some holes.
Yeah, everyone can cut some holes in their drywall to help air it out. You can see the areas that got more wet. You should have some lines, again, measuring tape, photograph, but cut little holes, 12 by 12 inches, periodically around that base of that room, so it can start to air out.
So you have to turn off the power, the gas, the water, all that stuff before entering the home. And one of the things, when I did some research for the show, HUD recommended assessing the home for structural integrity before coming in. So can we talk about that, Leo? Like, at what point is there structural integrity that, you should be reassessing the whole project, or if and when you should? Like, is it more susceptible to like wood frame homes that twist with water, or Is there structural integrity? Like if the water comes above where the plugs are, like as an engineer, what's your take on that?
I mean, when they're saying about structural integrity, they're looking for a shift of the home either off its foundation or moving. So if you have a crawl space home and you look into the crawl space, the piers are now leaning, shifted, fallen. They're at an angle. That's structural damage. Now, if you have a block home, is the home twisted? Are your windows broken? Are your windows cracked in? Like the big one. Like I'll have hurricane shutters up, and I take the shutters off and the window's cracked. Might be a structural issue. I mean, the odds of, when we were doing...
How common is that, though?
I was going to say, when we were doing Fort Myers Beach, because we helped clear Fort Myers Beach after Ian, it was one or the other. Your home was either structurally compromised and you can see it from the street, or you're okay. When you get up closer, there might be like little odds and ends here, but not something that's the whole structural integrity.
You're worried about your life if you open the door and walk inside.
Think about some of those older little wood frame homes that have been around for years. It wouldn't take much for rising floodwater to lift that home off the piers and move it.
It actually would take a lot more than you think, because those homes are designed with the crawl space home to let that water pass through. They're designed with you can get 6 to 12 inches of floodwater and it just kind of goes through. And it's got a channel and a path. What makes these block homes or these wood frame homes on the ground more susceptible to floodwaters is it's a big blockade. It's stopping.
Oh,
but when you have the crawl space home that's got the good ventilation, it's just letting water through.
Why did we get away from doing crawl spaces to slab on ground?
It's a lot cheaper and faster to do slab on grade.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, from a structural point too, your foundation is more level long term if you're on a slab versus crawl space.
I don't know about that. You've got 100-year-old crawl space homes. You don't have 100-year-old slab on grade homes. By the time you get 50 or 60 years into a slab on grade home, these mid-century homes, these 1950 to 1970s, you've now put all the electrical in the attic. You've now rerouted all your plumbing into the attic. You've got issues with trees and vegetation that die on property that are now undermining your soil. You start getting settlement issues. There's a lot that is wrong with slab on grade. Pier and beam foundation, which is crawl space, is actually better than slab on grade. Slab on grade is faster, easier, and anytime you can do something faster, easier, slightly less expensive.
Because you can work on stuff like if it's in the
That's
crawl space,
true.
you can just get under there and work on it. And guess what?
easier.
If the pipe breaks, it's going onto the ground and not
In the house.
up into your house.
Yeah, so there's a lot of benefits to crawl space. I think
Can
we've
you
been
build with a crawl space these days?
You can.
Okay, so you can still pass building codes and build a crawl space home if you wanted to. Say you're in a historic district and
Yeah, definitely. I see it all the
wouldn't
time.
be out of place. Okay.
With that kind of home, though, you're not looking at wood down there. You're looking at concrete. You're looking at an elevated slab.
Right. Okay. So a real professional, super custom, something like that is how it would be.
Not really super custom. It is common, but yeah, you're not doing wood. You're using concrete.
They do elevated slab with what, rebar? Like just a ton of reinforced rebar?
They can do rebar. You're looking at an elevated slab on a stem wall with an interior wall. In flood zones, you're doing breakaway walls. It's very common. It's just like I said, the builders nowadays want to build homes as fast as possible, as cheap as possible, and charge a premium for that. So they're all going slab on grade.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's good information. It's like the slab or the crawl spaces have been kind of get the lip up look. You know what I mean? For a lot of people versus slab.
The 100-year-old home on wood frame with a crawl space is going to need a lot of maintenance. It's 100 years old. What people don't realize is your 30 to 50-year-old slab on grade home, you're basically rebuilding all of your utilities in the attic. And what do you do when your sewer system starts failing? We deal with that a lot on slab and grade homes where the sewage system has failed. And then you're removing all the flooring, you're chipping out all the concrete. It's just as nasty.
It's a lot more work too because you
Yeah.
have to pull up all that stuff. All right, so when we come back,
A little aside on foundation talk here, folks.
So, we're going to talk about removing everything because literally it's what you have to do when your house is flooded. And there's also some hidden spaces that you want to make sure you don't forget about. And then we'll chat through the ventilation and the drying out process because that's really where the bulk of the work is, right? So we'll talk about that when we come back after the break. 813-377-2775. 813-377-2775. That's our off-air number. You can call or text us if you want some information, insurance help, real estate help. If you're down and you want to walk away, we have a cash investor that will buy the house, more than one. So we'll shop that for you. 813-377-2775. You got a lot of options. We're here to help. We'll be back in just a moment. Stick around.
Welcome home. This is Leo Kane with Beryl Engineering and Inspection. Normally at this point in the hour, I'd be talking about all our luscious listings with our open houses, but
we've got a lot to cover.
We've got a lot to cover.
Yes. So one of the biggest tips I want to leave you with this hour is it's probably going to take a while for an adjuster or the insurance company to get out there, which is why you want to document with a ton of photos, videos, timestamp, and all that stuff. But don't wait for an insurance adjuster to show up before you start drying out your house, right? We talk about the mold. Within 72 hours, that can multiply significantly and cause even more problems.
Just can't stress enough about the level of photos. If you think you have enough photos, go back and take twice as many. Because once you start repairing your home, it's called spoilage of evidence. And insurance companies can and will use that against you. If they can't see, they said, well, you cut 3 feet of drywall off, but you should have only cut 2 inches. Which, even though industry standard's 3 feet, but 3 feet of standing water in your home versus 2 inches is a big difference.
Huge. On
what other damages could be happening to your framing and your electrical and everything. Because if your water does or doesn't get above those electrical outlets, it's a whole, even though you're cutting the 3 feet of drywall, if the water didn't get above your electrical outlets, your electrical might be fine. So it's important.
What if it did? If it got to the electrical outlets?
You know, if it's in the electrical outlets, if you have standing water that got in there with crud that got into your electrical outlets, as a remediator, I'm going to tell you, you need to remove the outlets. You need to probably replace that electrical.
Do you need to rewire the entire house?
You could. I mean, it depends. This is where slab on grade is terrible. Let's say you're a slab on grade home. You now have your electrical conduits in the slab. The water gets in the conduit. And then the water now is underneath the home, flowing in those conduits. So everything looks dry, but you could have standing water in a pipe under your home. Where if you're a crawl space home, the water gets in there and just falls down.
So let's talk about flooring for a minute, okay? Obviously, if you have carpet and pad, all that's going to have to be ripped up and thrown away. Mm-hmm. For the conversation, let's keep it. We've talked a lot about slab versus pier, but let's assume it's a slab home because many of them
90%.
Right? Most of them are.
And your carpet's gone, your pad's gone, your tack strip is gone.
So
photograph.
But what floors, like tile will dry out, won't it?
Tile will debond. You'll get water under there. That water will evaporate under there and actually break the tiles bonding to the thin set, so your tiles will start to pop up.
The tiles have to come up.
Tile has to, everything. Basically, you're looking at all that flooring being removed, and this is where the insurance
regardless of the flooring.
What about hardwood? Doesn't hardwood floors dry out?
They could dry out, or they could warp. They'll warp over time. This is where the fights will happen with the insurance company. There are, and I'm not a lawyer, statutes about matching and continuous lay, and there are statutes about just the continuous lay and the matching, but there's also just what happens is a damage, it's a debonded, and these are things the insurance company really wants to get their own eyes on, and your adjuster will want to get their own eyes on, so you're fighting. It's a fight between what do I do to dry my home out versus what do I do to protect my financial future, because they need to look at it, and if you do all this stuff yourself, even the best documentation, and you do it yourself, is still going to come under scrutiny for possible spoilage.
I mean, but you just can't leave it like that, right? Like, people can't leave it like that. You talked about mold multiplying after 72 hours when the sun's back out. I mean, you can't leave it like that.
There's no good answer. There's what you should do, and your policies tell you need to mitigate the loss.
What you're likely going to do.
And then what you can do because of your skill set or availability of people, or what you should do because this is part of a claim and everyone wants to take a look at it. It's a terrible situation to be in as a homeowner. There's no right answer. It's like, here are 3 bad choices. Which one is the least bad? And I've seen people who do too much too soon without letting the insurance company know first get burned.
What if you're calling the insurance company and you're like, I can't wait for this adjuster. I've got to start taking this out. There's mold coming in. I'm not waiting. And it's documented.
Right. So if you call in the claim, what have you,
and they're like, we don't know when we're coming. There's a line of people get in line.
I would probably, if it was me, I would call a restoration company.
Or call a private.
I wouldn't call a private
Public adjuster?
I don't think you need. I would let the normal adjuster do his job first before you get into the private adjuster realm, especially for flood. Because flood, you're going to be way more scrutinized on flood than a homeowner's because it's FEMA. So good luck arguing with the federal government, But I would, there's certain things you can do. I would call a restoration company. Depends on the level of the damage, right? Like if it's something that's so bad that you can't even live in there, then do what you can to mitigate against further loss, but wait for them. Right.
So let's talk about those hidden spaces in your house that hold water, right? So whether you cut a foot above the water line or you've cut the 12 inches by 12 inches out to allow any water to start getting out and drying and airing out. What about those other areas, like maybe islands where there's a kick plate behind there?
Oh, yeah.
That's
water will
a good
get
little place for water hides. Where else?
Yeah, water will hide. I mean, a lot of times the dry out companies, they'll come in and they'll drill holes in the kick plates. They'll drill holes, and they actually drill holes through your baseboard into your wall. That's just letting that air flow. They want fresh air in there because if you get fresh air, what's going to grow mold is a dark, damp place. If you can remove it from being dark, remove it from being damp, and you take away mold's food, which is water, even if a mold starts to grow, it's not going to spread.
Perfect.
Because mold, by the way, even let's say you don't do it the right way, but things get covered up and you don't think about it, and then you go have a mold claim a year from now, well, mold's capped at $10,000 on most of these homeowners insurance policies. So if it's in your entire house and you didn't stop it like you could have, a lot of out-of-pocket cost on that one too.
So what can you save? What can't you save? So if it's solid wood cabinets, right, they should be able to hopefully get those dried out enough where they're okay. If it's particle board or a more modern kitchen, though, you're not saving those. That's done.
Yeah.
What about like interior doors? What other things have you seen people be able to save, Leo, versus...
What about appliances?
What have people tried not to save?
I mean, it depends how much water you have coming into your home on what you're going to save. That's where the height of the water comes in handy. I mean, if your water level is above... The safest thing is you will lose 100% of what's below that water line. Flooring, baseboards, drywall, that's 100%. Electrical, whatever's below that water line, 100% needs to come out. However, when you get above the water line, you're now dealing with wicking. This is why you remove 3 feet of drywall, because your drywall acts as a sponge and it sucks water up. Mm-hmm. So cabinets, kick plates, that particle board, all that stuff most likely needs to come out. Yeah, that's just...
Do you want to talk about a bleach solution to kill mold if it's starting?
Nope. Do not use bleach.
Okay.
So if you spray mold with bleach, the mold's going to panic and spore all over the place.
Okay.
If you spray it with a vinegar solution, you let it soak for 10 minutes, it just kind of suffocates the mold, and that's what you should be doing.
10 minutes of contact time. We've talked about
10
that.
Minutes of contact.
I have not forgotten my life lessons from Leo Kane.
All right, we're out of time already. I wish we had more time to talk about it.
I know.
Don't
We'll be
forget,
back next week.
You can reach out to disasterassistance.gov. There's a lot of information. Just search for the FEMA helpline. And if we can help you, just call or text 813-377-2775. Remember, love where you live or we'll fix it. Literally, welcome home.